G'day folks, Rod here. How you going? Hope you're all well. Welcome. Just want to do a little video for you about painting texture. And this is something that I didn't really understand when I started out painting. There's a lot of things I didn't understand. But once I started to get the idea in my head, I think it really made a difference to my painting. The way I learned it was by going to National Gallery of Australia in Victoria, in Melbourne, and looking at the Arthur Streeton paintings. When I looked at them up close, I noticed the paint texture was really thick. And, I was a beginner at the time and I was putting on my paint fairly thin, trying to save paint. I'm not really sure why, but I was using very thin paint. And g'day, Gay, how you going? So I was using my paint way too thin. And I went to the National Gallery in Victoria. I saw the Arthur Streeton paintings and I noticed he had these really big chunky brush marks and chunky paint and a lot of texture in there. And over time I've started to develop my style more like that. So I just want to show you this painting that I've been working on. Let me just flip that around. There we go. So this is another painting of coloured sands. Those of you who have been following me will know that I recently went up to on a four-wheel drive trip up on the beach camping and have been doing a few different paintings of the coloured sand dunes up there, up near Rainbow Beach. And I've also been modifying my technique a little bit and experimenting with different approaches. And one of those has been the palette knife, using a big palette knife and lots of paint. And the reason why I started doing that is because the artists that I really love, the ones that I really appreciate, I noticed this is what they were doing and I wanted to paint more like them. So this is obviously just the direction that I'm taking my personal painting in, but what I wanted to really show you was the texture in this paint and hopefully it will translate and just the layering. And this is something when I started out painting I didn't really get this, but if I come down here you'll see that sort of dark tone through there. That's the initial wash that I did of my darks. Now, with the Moore method of painting, we do our drawing and our blocking. So that dark tone there is the initial wash. And then there's lots of different layers of paint that's put over that, like this sand, the orangey pink tones in here for the different colours of the sand dune, the green of the foliage, and so on, has all been added over the top of that initial wash. And creates lots of layering, but it's also created lots of texture. And you can see the marks there from the palette knife where I've scraped the paint across. And it's kind of difficult to translate to you how much texture there is with this paint. But in places it's really quite thick. Okay. Now if you do a close-up like this, it may or may not look right. Have a look at that. Okay, so that's quite thick paint. Now obviously this is oil paint. And it's easy to achieve that sort of effect with oil paint. You can still do it with acrylic. Quite a number of my acrylic paintings do have that sort of thick paint. I'm having trouble focusing there, but pardon me. If I come down to the water, have a look at the chunky paint there. And so what I find is that using more textured layers of paint like that, it adds another dimension to the viewers. And I noticed I recently had a couple of paintings up in an exhibition as part of the Plein Air Painters on the Sunshine Coast here. We had a little exhibition and I noticed that people were really fascinated by that layered texturing of the paint. Have a look at that. Beautiful, right? People were fascinated by it. They would stand in front of it and they'd look really close up at all the different texture of the paint. Look at the different colour combinations in there. That comes about through, with the palette knife, using broken colour when you mix it. So don't over-mix the paint on your palette. But those layers of texture, I think, really add something to... I'm just trying to get the right focus and the right angle in there for you. It really adds something to a painting, I think. So I just thought I'd show you that. When you look at it up close, it kind of looks weird, right? It's all very abstract and doesn't make any sense. But when you come back and stand back and look at it on the wall, everything falls into place together. And it just, I think that layered texture just adds another dimension to a painting that really brings it alive. And that's what I found when I went and looked at those Arthur Streeton paintings at the National Gallery. There was just something mesmerising about them. And it was really, you know, when you can see the artist's brushwork and the application of paint in a painting, I think people love that. You know, I think people who appreciate art, they love to see the artist's technique and approach. I mean, you can see there I've even left, well, just let it focus, there we go. I've even left some of the canvas without paint on it in there. So I just thought I'd show you that. Now the other thing I found interesting about this painting is, you can see in the sky there I've got some green, because I had a dirty brush, don't tell anyone. I didn't clean my brush properly, but there's green in the sky. And at first I was worried about it. Okay, but what I tend to do, I'll just show you over here. I always put my paintings in the lounge room or whatever this room is, family room. We don't use it really. I always leave them sitting there for a week or so, so I can look at them as I walk around. And so at first I was really worried, oh, look at that messy green I've got in the sky, and I was going to repaint the sky out completely. Look at that, the green there. But then I noticed when I looked at it from here, right, which is how people view a painting on a wall, that green sort of disappears into the sky. And it actually works because it ties in with the green in the foliage and the green in the ocean, right? So it unifies those areas together. So anyway, I was just looking at it and I thought, I really like how I've applied the paint and the texture in this one. And I'm going to do more paintings like this in the future with this sort of approach. And I thought you might find it interesting as well. Try putting on, you know, textured layers of paint in your painting and see what happens. Alrighty. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, have a great day. I'm just about to head off and film this week's episode of Learn to Paint TV. And if you have a look there, see that dark tone there? That's the initial wash, that purpley tone. So those of you who've done our oil painting course, which we just released recently, see that dark tone in there? That's all an initial wash that I put through. And I've just built the layers up over that. Yes, if you went through our oil painting course, you'll know what I mean by the washes there. Sort of a step before blocking in. Anyway, I'm off to film this week's episode of Learn to Paint TV. I hope you've enjoyed that little video of the coloured sands. Well, Margaret, you can paint like this. It's a process. You know, when I started painting, my paintings were nothing like this at all. You know, they really weren't. Well, I did my first oil painting 8 years ago, right? And I didn't paint consistently for 8 years. That's for sure. You know, it's only been the last 4 or 5 years that I've really painted consistently. And what I've had to do is to learn as much as I possibly could and then practice everything I learned, right? And then eventually I got to being able to paint like this. And I'll show you these other two. Excuse the camera moving around. Eventually I got to the point where I could paint like this. All right, so that's Noosa River. No, it's not. It's Noosa Front Beach. And this is Noosa National Park, right? So it's a process. So people say to me, oh, you're so lucky you've got talent for painting, right? But the reality is, if you'd seen my paintings when I started, I didn't have any talent for painting. What I did was I learnt the fundamentals, and I studied and I observed, and then I practiced everything I learnt. And I painted a lot. So you could paint like this. It's just part of a process, right? Now, I'll look back at this in 5 years' time and think, oh, that wasn't that great a painting. I'm happy with it now based on where I'm at. But it's all a process, it's a journey. And it's a fascinating one. So have a think about how you can apply more texture to your paintings. Thanks, Ginny. Appreciate that. All right, I better get out of here. I've got to go and film Learn to Paint TV for you for next week. Cheers, guys. Have a good day.